So we've all read and taken notes before, but do you know how to do it effectively? This tutorial is going to give you some hints for how to read, highlight, sticky note while you're researching online, but really most of this is transferable to paper as well, okay? I have a few pointers that I'm going to keep coming back to on this little sticky note. First is focus on your research question, okay? You always need to be very focused while you're reading so that you are finding things that will help you answer your question. You might need to revise your question, but keep thinking, keep focused. So my question here is about how can DHS, which is the Department of Human Services, make reforms so that they serve child abuse victims better. Okay, so there's a lot of issues with child abuse, and I'm interested in how can we help those victims better. Okay, so if that's my research question, I want to keep focused on that. The second suggestion I have for researching is that you read the article, or at least a large chunk of the article, before you start highlighting and taking notes. The reason for that is otherwise I just see people getting too highlight happy. You're reading and everything seems important when you're reading new information. Okay, so it's better to read a big chunk or a whole thing at one time. Okay, the third suggestion I have for you here is that when you're reading online, you use your cursor to help you focus as you're going. So I like to highlight each paragraph as I'm reading, because when I'm reading or when I'm online for something like Twitter or Facebook, I just go, you move your cursor a lot. You're skimming, you're browsing. But when you're researching, you really have to focus. So you take your hand off the trackpad or the mouse and you just read, okay? And that's hard. You have to retrain your brain to read online. Okay, so I highlight the paragraph. If it's a long paragraph, I'll even highlight just a few sentences at a time, and then I'll move on when I'm done. Okay, it helps me focus. Give it a try. Okay, so the next thing I suggest is that you summarize the source as a whole after you've read it. Okay, before you start highlighting quotes or other big chunks of information, I like to put a sticky note just at the beginning, just to kind of give myself an overall, all right, what did I just read? If you have a long article, you could do this by chunks, but overall, you see here, I've written a summary of this article. Pennsylvania is considering blah, 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 okay? It's just a real basic, get my mind focused. Okay, my next suggestion is that when you're highlighting and sticky noting, do not get in the habit of highlighting lots of whole sentences. Only highlight a whole sentence when it's like an amazing quote, when it's, something where you want to hear that expert's words, okay? So that means that you're only going to be highlighting things that are already in quotation marks unless the source you're reading is an opinion piece, like an op-ed or an editorial, okay? If it's an op-ed or an editorial, then you might highlight other things. But in an article like this, an informational article, you should really only highlight whole sentences if an expert is saying something in a particularly important way that you want to capture. So for example, here's one place I did that. I want to capture when this guy, Michael Arsham, who's the director of a big agency, said one of the dangers of contracting, blah, blah, blah. I want his words in my paper. So there it's okay to highlight a whole paragraph, or not a paragraph, a whole quotation. Notice in my sticky note, I also added, I did add commentary, or I added who said the quote, okay? Because you want your notes to be kind of self-explanatory, so you don't have to go back and reread the article. So I noted who said it here, and then I put my commentary, what I think about it, okay? And so you really shouldn't see a ton of highlighting in your sources, okay? So notice here I just have 2 quotes, and I'm like, yeah, I might want to save that, okay? The other thing that kind of goes along with that is if it's not a quote, like someone's authentic words that you want to capture, then just put a sticky note and paraphrase or put it in your own words or summarize, condense that information that factual stuff that you would like to focus on. And just attach that note if you're using Diigo just to a word or phrase, don't highlight a whole paragraph, okay? So for example, that's what I've done here. I just did the hot alternative approach. And you see, I'm reminding myself, this is a quote, the hot alternative approach, and I'm putting commentary in that, that phrase kind of strikes me as funny. So that's a little short quote that I might want to grab. And then there's other little things here, like I just highlighted the advantages, and I'm putting private advantages. Here's my little summary of the private advantages they talked about. And I didn't put commentary there, but I can as well. Like, I hadn't thought of this, or whatever it is you want to say about that source, okay? So, so you see here that when you look at your source, you really should not see tons and tons and tons of highlighting, okay? Last thing to point out here is that if you notice, I've used two different colors. I did that with my highlighting so that I could remember these are positive things about the reform that I'm seeing, and these are negative things or criticisms that I'm seeing about this reform in my topic. That'll help me later as I'm organizing my information to start writing my paper. Okay, and finally, when you go then to your library, here's what it's going to look like. Okay, if you have done a good job of highlighting, you should be able to look just at your library and understand your source. You won't have to go back and reread it, okay? So notice here I've summarized it, and if it feels like you're doing a lot of writing now, it's okay, because you're going to be able to put that into your paper much more easily if you do a good job summarizing and paraphrasing right now. All right, happy researching.